Tennessee Titans are planning to release wide receiver Julio Jones. Sources tell Schefter and Diana Rossini. Jones was signed through the 2024 season, likely be released with a post-June 1 designation, given the Titans $9.5 million in salary cap savings. As you would imagine, a lot of people want Julio Jones on the team. He gets connected to Kyle Shanahan all the time. And it's not hard to find things that Kyle said about Julio. Kyle has as many quotes about Julio like Julio is on his team since he no longer coached Julio. It's one thing if you coach a guy, you can find 2 pages of Google results of Kyle Shanahan quotes about Julio Jones since Kyle Shanahan left the Falcons. And that includes last year on the Flying Coach podcast with our guy Peter Schrager and Sean McVay, as transcribed here last year from 49ers Web Zone. Our biggest fear in Julio is that Sean's going to go for him, Kyle Shanahan said. Like, my first choice is, man, I just wish Julio would go to the AFC. But if he's going to go to the NFC West, we've got to make sure we get him, because it almost ends up being an arms race. I know how good a job Pete does. I know how good a job Cliff does. Everyone's got quarterbacks. That's the frustrating thing for me. I always say, let's do it the right way. And there's no right way or wrong way, but you don't want to have to risk your future to compete in 1 year. And that's the hardest thing about being in our division, because I know how Sean rolls. And it's very similar to me. And I can see the other 2 guys in our division. Julio would have helped everybody, but you know what it's doing to your organization for that year and years to come. It's a really risky thing. But, man, if Sean's getting them, I'm going to risk that. I know how he thinks, too. That's how we all think, because you got to compete in your division first.
Well, we talked a lot about this last year, right? Should they be in the mix? It worked out that they weren't, right? Because ultimately, Juwan Jennings emerged, and they worked through the Brandon Ayuk, and Debo became a star. But sometimes when you're patient, a year later, like, he's clearly damaged goods, and he's not worth any money. Can you get him on a veteran minimum contract, right? The equivalent of what the NBA does with, like, what they're doing, what the Warriors are doing with Andre Iguodala. And you know the best part about getting a guy on a nothing contract, and if you're Julio, like, maybe you could just sign a 1-year contract, then maybe you can get one more, like, 1-year, $8 million deal.
Right.
Because right now you're trending the wrong way. So you want to go to a place that's going to utilize you and have a guy that loves you. And I would say that Julio makes a shitload of sense. Now, you would also say that, like, LaFleur's been around Julio, right, in Green Bay. Why wouldn't they be interested just for $1 million, just to be like, hey, Aaron, we'll just
make Aaron very happy.
Yeah, I would say the Cowboys are always, like, to me, guys like that. You know, again, he's got to be cheap. I would be all for getting him for, $1 million, but, or even if it's like 1.2 and then incentivize it up to like 6 or 7, that if you catch 5-6 touchdowns, you get 60 plus catches. The problem with Julio, you would say now that you have 2 established wide receivers, even if you pay no money, he doesn't play special teams. So when you have 5 wide receivers dress, Debo does not play special teams unless it's like you're desperate and you put him back there. Ayuk ideally doesn't punt return or whatever, doesn't play special teams. Juwan Jennings will have to a little bit. That's just the nature of being a third wide receiver. And then if Julio is on your team, he's dressing too, like, he's not playing special teams. So now it's like when we argue, like, part of it is Hightower was pretty terrible and clearly it felt like no one knew what was going on. But you could also say it's like, Kyle wasn't really into playing as good players on special teams. So then you get there's a huge drop-off.
Remember, we talked to Dante Whitner about it. I said, Dante, why do you think their special team sucks? And he said, one thing is they don't put their best players on special teams like we used to do, the Harbaugh era. And he's right.
Which is a balance. Like, do you want
it is.
Use check on every unit? Do you want Brandon?
Your linebackers are dropping like flies. Do you want them covering all the time?
No. And it's like, well, the Ambry Thomas is your third corner, but you're like, we got to utilize him on all the teams. It's easy for Belichick to say it when he's like, yeah, even if a guy goes down, I still got 6 rings.
Yeah, right. It's weird. I mean, they just re-signed Matthew Slater again. I don't know if you caught that signing the other day.
Well, he's gonna sign 1-year deals with the Patriots till he's the coach. Would it totally shock you if anyone just transitioned? Like, the Patriots have announced Matthew Slater's retired, and we have named him the head coach of the Patriots. In waiting, he will coach 1 year under Belichick, and then he'll transition.
Are they going to get around the cap somehow by making him the special teams coach, but also keeping him as an active player?
I saw that Cannon, the kick returner, he's gone.
Wait, Trent. Yeah, Trent. Did he go
but again, like, to me, that is you find that guy in a practice squad. Like, that's easy to find.
I think Julio's made somewhere in the neighborhood of, $95 million in his NFL career.
I was gonna guess more than that, but maybe.
Well, his rookie deal was $16 million, and then his contract that he signed in 2015 with Atlanta was $71 million.
Gotcha.
So that's
he
87.
was that transition when they capped the rookie deals because he was like the 6th pick. So a couple years before that would have been $40 million.
And it feels like that he was in. It feels like he's been around since those early deals. I mean, 2011. When did they cap the rookie deals?
Yeah, I got career earnings 140 because where he's really cashed in, guy, the last. From
you know what? I might not have his rookie deal. What was his rookie year?
11. But do you know where he's separated? 19, 26 million, 20, 22 million. Last year, 15
did he
million.
sign a new contract in 19?
Yeah, he signed a 3rd contract. So in
his
back-to-back
first
years,
contract
he made
went
$50
through.
million.
Gotcha. Okay. So his first contract went through 20, but they wiped that thing out and gave him a new contract. Got it.
Because remember, he was threatening to quit or hold out.
That's right. Yep. Glad you checked. So
he had life change. I mean, he was already obviously super rich. He went from fucking super wealthy in 19.
So the point is, like, this is the time in his career. Now, he could go try and find the most money, but it's not like someone's offering him $8 million anywhere.
He made $140 million playing receivers, a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shit ton of money. So, he played 9 games 2 years ago. He played 10 games last year. Not very good.
Right. 2011 is when the lockout, I was there. That sucks for him. I went to his draft.
Wow.
Julio,
you were on the phone? You still had hair
AJ.
then. That was a save it year for MIDDLEKAUFF.
Roger, Danny Watkins. We'll take Danny Watkins.
Put in the card. A Hall of Famer. We were all here when Danny Watkins went in the first round. 26.
Raj, he's a former fireman. Say
out of the Philadelphia
fireman.
Fire Department. He's 27 years old. He's in an athletic prime. Hasn't played offensive line in 12 years. We got him.
Yeah, Julio, J.J. Alden, A.J. Green, Von Miller, all these fucking... I mean, it was a historic draft. My Eagles might have the worst pick.
Well, you did some good for a local community, though, by drafting a fireman. So I think the question is, you said it, but Julio and Kyle Shanahan is a fit. How does he fit in on this team? And that's the harder thing. Do they have a number one? Do the Niners have a number 1 receiver? Yes. Do they have a number 2 receiver? Yes. Do they have a young player they drafted that, I mean, you would say at worst is a number 4. I mean, do you want Juwan Jennings to be your number 3 or like your 4? We could debate that, but he clearly is a very good player, right?
Who, Juwan Jennings?
Julio's not better than him right now. Put it that way.
No. I mean, what I saw Juwan Jennings do live standing there against the Rams in that game, and obviously he went on to still make more plays, was really impressive. Just the way he moved, his physicality, like he could break tackles. And
it'd be like on 3rd and 7 that he'd make plays too, right?
And what's his
first down machine?
What do you think Juwan Jennings' greatest attribute is?
You mean he's cheap?
His salary.
Yeah.
Right?
So I just don't know if you're Julio, if the Niners they make a ton of sense in the sense that it's Kyle, but do they really make that much sense? Now you could say injuries happen. There's always a place for another receiver.
I think vet minimum, you take him in a heartbeat.
Put him around. The other value. You remember last year when Juszczyk was on the show? He said,
Juwan Jennings career earnings,
yeah,
$900,000.
He's gonna get a little bump though this year, right? Because he's
been in the league for 3 years. $825 is what I got.
Wait, 3 years? He was drafted in the Ham YouTube era.
Yeah, he was a practice squad guy.
He was in the 20 draft.
He was in the 20 draft.
So he's coming into his 3rd year.
Practice squad all that year.
Yeah.
And then last year was the first year.
He's coming into his 3rd year.
Yeah, so he's got 2 more years on his contract.
The league year begins today.
I guess what I'm saying is they'll have to tender him after this season.
I just think that
does he have 2nd round tender written all over him? You give him $3 million next year, or is that probably bold?
$3 million, absolutely. You give him 3. I mean, if he plays this year, like he played last year,
like the 49ers 2nd round tendered Al-Shaair, and that was $4 million. So that's which
is fine to me.
Well, it's me too, but it's a double whammy, right? You're like putting a pretty impressive tender on. No one's going to trade a 2nd round pick for him, but $4 million isn't nothing. But you value that. Like he's a $4 million player. is Juwan Jennings at in 2 years? I think that's, or I mean, in a year. It's going to be fascinating to watch because I don't think it's inconceivable that Juwan Jennings could have a season of like 54 catches and 6 touchdowns.
Oh, right. No, yes.
And like, to me, he's on a trajectory, different player, but just in terms of trajectory, Kendrick Bourne style, where it's like, you were lucky to have him for your third receiver for 3 years.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And then in 2 years, Balky gives him $60 million.
I just I just think back to what Juszczyk said last year, which is like, man, I think all Ayuk needs is a veteran around him. He would love that. He needs that. And obviously, as the year played out, they got the most out of Ayuk by the end and Debo. But maybe there is a value in that as well if you get Julio around.
To me,
for
the
league
price.
minimum.
Yeah, price.